Hello everyone and welcome to U.S. Election Special Broadcast. I'm Susan Tehrani. Dominating the news here in the United States and around the world, U.S. President Donald Trump along with the First Lady have tested positive for the coronavirus. We'll have the latest details on that story and more on this edition. First, the headlines.
After the shocking announcement of President Trump and First Lady testing positive for COVID-19, the Democratic challengers Joe Biden and Kamala Harris send best wishes via Twitter. Several world leaders and heads of state have also wished for a speedy recovery of the U.S. president. Trump's close aides and officials had to undergo COVID-19 tests after the announcement. Vice President Mike Pence, his wife and Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin have tested negative. Attorney General William P. Barr will be tested for the coronavirus soon. The governor of New Jersey, Phil Murphy, has urged all the attendees of Trump's fundraiser event to get tested or self-quarantine. Trump and his entourage had flown to New Jersey for a fundraiser at his golf club. President Trump was in close contact with dozens of other people, including campaign supporters, at a roundtable event. The Secretary of Health and Human Services, Alex Azar, will continue with his plans to testify on the Trump administration's coronavirus response before the House Select Committee. For the first time since February, government's top health official will face questions on Capitol Hill. In the last snapshot of the jobs market ahead of the presidential election, the Labour Department releases unemployment report. Jobless rates have fallen to 7.9% in September, with a slow recovery rate.
Donald Trump, the president, who has downplayed the risks of the coronavirus, often mocked masks, held large rallies, and encouraged the country to get back to business like pre-COVID times, has now tested positive for the coronavirus, along with First Lady Melania Trump. Just 32 days to the U.S. presidential elections, the announcement has left the country's politics and government in a state of frenzy. A lot of questions need to be answered, like what's next? Who will be in charge if the president gets really sick? What is the precedent? And what does all of this mean for the upcoming elections? The answers to those questions in our next report.
The virus. They're working hard. Looks like by April, in theory, when it gets a little warmer, it miraculously goes away. I hope that's true.
And part of the thing is you want to keep it the way it is. You don't want to see panic, because there's no reason to be panicked about. We have done an incredible job. We're going to continue. It's going to disappear. One day it's like a miracle.
And I just want to say that the end of the pandemic is in sight.
After downplaying the COVID-19 threat for months, U.S. President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania Trump have tested positive for coronavirus. Trump broke the news on Twitter. He said, "Tonight, First Lady of the United States and I tested positive for COVID-19. We will begin our quarantine and recovery process immediately. We will get through this together." Donald Trump's physician at the White House posted an update informing that the American president and the First Lady are doing well at this time. Dr. Conley further wrote that he expects the president to be able to continue carrying out his duties without disruption while recovering. Donald Trump and Melania Trump contracted the virus after top advisor Hope Hicks tested positive. Hicks traveled regularly with President Trump on Air Force One, along with other senior aides. The most recent trips were to Ohio and Minnesota, when Hicks accompanied Trump for the presidential debate and a campaign event. Hicks was seen boarding Marine One helicopter along with the White House staffers, including Jared Kushner and Stephen Miller. During a call-in appearance on Fox News, Trump drastically changed the terminology that he uses for coronavirus. What Trump considered just a regular flu is now a very tough disease. Reporters and other officials who stay close to Trump get tested regularly for COVID-19 at the White House. However, officials did away with daily temperature checks for everyone months ago. In the run-up to the presidential election, Trump has been keeping up his rigorous travel schedule across the country. He held rallies in multiple states and addressed thousands of people despite repeated warnings from public health professionals against organizing events with large crowds.
Are you not worried about the disease issues, sir?
Well, so far, we have had no problem whatsoever. It's outside. That's a big difference, according to the experts.
Trump and his entourage skipped face masks. Trump has time and again mocked others who take precautions.
Of what happens when you are in France continues to be a story.
You're going to have to take that off, Liz. Just, you can take it off. How many feet are you away? When needed, I wear masks.
Okay, let me ask.
I don't wear masks like him. Every time you see him, he's got a mask. He could be speaking 200 feet away from it. He shows up with the biggest mask I've ever seen.
In a major turn of events, President Trump, who has been downplaying the COVID-19 threat since the beginning of the pandemic, has tested positive himself. A recent study has found that Trump has been the largest driver of misinformation, conspiracy theories and falsehoods related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Researchers at Cornell University analyzed 38 million articles about the pandemic published in English language. Nearly 38% of the overall misinformation conversation had mentions of President Trump. The most prevalent topic of misinformation was miracle cures.
One day it's like a miracle, it will disappear.
Over the past few months, Trump has suggested plenty of miracle cures, including bleach injections, ultraviolet light, and hydroxychloroquine, to name a few. The United States has reported more than 7 million cases of coronavirus. More than 200,000 people have succumbed to the disease. The presidential election is barely a few weeks away, and it is not known how Trump's positive COVID-19 report will affect his election campaign. For now, the White House has removed Florida from Trump's election schedule. His last trip was to New Jersey. The diagnosis can be considered the most serious health threat to a sitting American president in decades. 74-year-old Trump falls into the highest risk category. Fallout depends on the severity of the illness and how it impacts the president's health. In case the president becomes incapacitated, the US Constitution's 25th Amendment allows the president to hand over control to the vice president. In the rarest of the rare case, if both president and vice president were to pass away, the House Speaker Nancy Pelosi would take charge. It is not known for how long Trump and Hicks have had coronavirus and exactly who they came in contact with. We will be closely watching. US Election Desk, WION. World is One.
President Donald Trump's campaign has declared war on the Commission on Presidential Debates. The Trump campaign has termed the commission as a, quote, partisan outfit bent on undermining the president after Donald Trump's aggressive performance in last week's debate. It also comes at a time when the commission has announced that changes need to be made to some of the rules of the debate moving forward. White House Press Secretary also reiterated Donald Trump's comments, saying that perhaps a different moderator or Democratic candidate would ensure a fair debate. So who won the debate last week? And will the Trump White House adhere to any new norms put forth by the commission? Let's find out.
Opinion polls indicate that most Americans have made up their minds about who they will vote for on November 3rd. The fight is for a small slice of the electorate that remains undecided. The presidential debate is a platform which provides voters with much needed clarity. However, the recent face-off got derailed from its objective and turned ugly. Denouncing all the cross-talking and name-calling, the Commission on Presidential Debates vowed for an orderly discussion. However, US President Donald Trump's re-election campaign has rejected calls for new rules for the next two presidential debates. Trump took to Twitter and said, "Why would I allow the debate commission to change the rules for the second and third debates when I easily won last time?" For the record, post-debate opinion polls conducted so far does not suggest that President Trump was the winner. A CNN poll shows 60% of debate watchers say Biden did a better job. A CBS poll said 48% of debate watchers thought Biden won. During a conference call with reporters, Trump's senior campaign advisor Jason Miller said, "We don't want any changes." During a press conference, when White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany was questioned about Trump's stance, she said,
"First, with regard to the commission rule changes, the president made clear his view on that yesterday, that he thinks the only way there's a fair debate is a change in the moderator and a change in the Democrat nominee. He wants to debate. He plans on being at the debate, but he wants the rules to be fair and wants a fair exchange and doesn't want rules that cover for a certain candidate's inability to perform well."
On the other hand, Biden's campaign spokesperson Andrew Bates said that the former vice president would follow the rules laid out by the debates commission. He further said the only real question left is whether the president will start following the rules in the next two debates. Biden said he hopes that whoever answers questions has an opportunity to answer it fully.
In the next two debates?
Yes, I'll participate in the next debate.
Would you be open? There's consideration that they might mute the mics in between you all speaking. Is that something you would support?
As long as we have an opportunity to respond to the question of the people in the audience. This is, I understand, like a town hall. And I think it's appropriate that when a person, a constituent, someone considering how they're going to vote this year, when they ask the question, whoever asks that question gets an opportunity to answer it fully.
The second presidential debate is scheduled for October 15th in Miami. It will be held in a town hall format. This time, members in the audience will be putting questions to the two candidates. One of the possible changes being discussed to help moderators is allowing them to turn off a candidate's microphone. The first presidential debate has been criticized as an embarrassment and a sad portrayal of U.S. democracy. So far, no new guidelines have been laid out to make presidential debates more informative and less confrontational. Will Trump adhere to the new rules? We will have to wait to find out. U.S. Election Desk, WION. World is one.
In the wake of Donald Trump's vague claim that ballots have been dumped in the river, the White House press secretary tried to clear things up. However, she lost her temper when asked by reporters to name the river and explain why Donald Trump has been reluctant to denounce white supremacy. She sparred, withdrew, and attacked. Here's a look at what happened.
The other day he said they found a lot of ballots in a river. Who is they?
What the president was referring to are something that we've seen just in the last 7 days, where in Wisconsin there were trails of May ending up in a ditch. That's, I believe, the specific he was referring to, and that included absentee ballots.
We're specifically, in this particular statement, though, who is they that found those ballots, and where is this river anywhere in this country?
The local authorities. It was a ditch in Wisconsin that they were found, and I can get the article to your inbox if you'd like. And beyond that,
if he misspoke, that's fine.
No,
so
that's I believe
he meant
that's what the president was referring to. And you're missing the forest for the trees here. The point is,
no, I cover the news, and I like to report accurately in the news. And when the president says they found a lot of ballots in a river, I simply want to know where the river is.
No, you simply want to ignore the fact of the matter. Again,
I got asked so many questions about this, and my Fox affiliates, where is this river? And I can't give them an accurate information, and that's why I'm asking you.
This is what is happening here. You are ignoring the problem here, which is last week in Pennsylvania, you had ballots found in a ditch. That is a fact. In Wisconsin, 7 military ballots, all marked for Trump, were found cast aside. There are problems with mass mail-in voting. I actually don't understand the lack of journalistic curiosity and reporting on this.
I'm asking you where the river is, and you can't give an answer. If you say the president meant a ditch, then you say he meant a ditch. I just want to know where the river is.
And lack of journalistic curiosity.
I'm very curious. Where's the river?
Yes.
That's curiosity.
Trump nominated and imminently qualified.
Just to clear it up this morning, can you, naming it, make a declarative statement that you denounce, that the president denounces it.
I just did. The president has denounced white supremacy, the KKK, and hate groups in all forms. He signed a resolution to that effect. The president just last week, perhaps you all weren't covering it, but just last week expressed his desire to see the KKK prosecuted as domestic terrorists. This president had advocated for the death penalty for a white supremacist, the first federal execution in 17 years. His record on this is unmistakable, and it's shameful that the media refuses to cover it. His record is not mixed in the slightest, and when you go back in history, you can see that history right here. When you go back in history, you can see that Jesse Jackson has praised the president as someone who served underserved communities. I don't speak for that group, so I'm not sure why you're asking me why they're saying a certain thing. If
someone denounced you, you probably wouldn't put it on a T-shirt and make badges of it, right?
The president specifically, verbatim, was asked yesterday, white supremacy, do you denounce them? To which he responded, I have always denounced any form of that. Those are the facts.
Former FBI Director James Comey, the person behind the investigation of the Trump campaign and alleged Russian interference, testified before a Senate committee. Comey appeared before the Republican-led Senate Judiciary Committee to talk about the origins of his probe, since Republicans firmly believe that the investigation was meant to undermine Donald Trump's presidency and candidacy. 32 days left to the already tumultuous presidential campaign. Comey defended his investigation. Here's a detailed look at that investigation and the political implication it has had.
The former FBI Director James Comey appeared before the U.S. Congress in a politically charged hearing. A hearing on FBI's investigation into the links between Trump's 2016 campaign and Russia.
I do. Thank you.
The Senate hearing came just weeks before the 2020 presidential election, as the president and his party continue to attack the Russia affair as a hoax.
You have a document central to getting a warrant against an American citizen. It is falling apart. The CIA says it's internet rumor. The person who prepared it was on a jihad against Trump on the payroll of the Democratic Party.
Again, I'm not going to respond to your preamble.
Okay.
I think Mr. Horowitz found that it was not disclosed, and a variety of facts were not disclosed. He didn't find intentional misconduct, but he found concerning failures to disclose.
The Republican legislators seized on error identified in an internal Justice Department investigation.
How could the director of the FBI not know all of this? How is it possible that the system gathers so much exculpatory information? This internet rumor, according to the CIA, that the actual interview of the subsource disavows the reliability of the document, that the actual subsource was a suspected Russian spy. How could all that happen and not get up to you, the director of the FBI, of one of the most important investigations in the history of the FBI? How is that possible?
I can only speculate because it didn't. And as I said, the investigation overall was incredibly important. The piece you're focused on is obviously important, but a much smaller slice.
And in order to cast a broader doubt on FBI's 2016 probe, U.S. Attorney General William Barr has ordered a special criminal investigation. James Comey is the latest high-profile official to testify to the Senate Judiciary Committee. The committee, which wants to dismiss the entire probe and subsequent Mueller report as a botched-up investigation. Now, to understand the entire case around the ongoing political and judiciary clash, let's take a look at the whole investigation from the beginning. The road to the FBI investigation and the subsequent Mueller report goes back to the 2016 presidential campaign and to Russia.
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find
evidence of Russian interference had sparked a secret FBI investigation that followed Trump into the White House. The FBI had a code name for the counterintelligence investigation into the links between Trump's associates and Russia, Crossfire Hurricane. But the US president personally intervened in the investigation in May of 2017 after using his power to fire the FBI director, James Comey. What led to the dismissal of the head of the US intelligence body? The now former director of the FBI, James Comey, went public in a testimony before Congress. All heads turned to the television in every newsroom in America, patiently waiting for him to confirm the investigation on Trump campaign on record. The big moment suddenly went off the races to Donald Trump and his presidency. That moment was the death knell and the end of James Comey. A day after a firing that caused a nationwide political storm, the US president held a meeting with the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and Ambassador Sergei Kislyak. The crisis kept building, but plucking Comey out did not end the investigation. The FBI's work was taken over by the Special Counsel investigation, and one of America's legendary prosecutors and former FBI Director Robert Mueller was appointed to head the investigation. A Republican who had run the FBI for both George Bush and Barack Obama, Robert Mueller was back at the center of the action. A surprise twist came when President Trump had his first one-on-one summit with Vladimir Putin in Helsinki. The Robert Mueller investigation led to indictment of Donald Trump's aides, a total of 6 Trump loyalists. Trump's former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, sentenced to 7.5 years in prison. Trump's former national security advisor, Michael Flynn. Trump's foreign policy advisor, George Papadopoulos. Paul Manafort's right-hand man, Rick Gates. Trump's former personal lawyer, Michael Cohen. And Trump's informal foreign policy advisor, George Nader. However, after almost 2 years of investigation that resulted in 37 indictments or guilty pleas and 199 criminal charges, the investigation came to an end. Mueller's final report concluded that neither the president nor his campaign conspired with Russia, and on the issue of obstruction of justice, the special counsel made no determination. He wrote, while his report doesn't conclude that the president committed a crime, it also does not exonerate him. And now the Department of Justice under the Trump administration is on around-the-clock task to clean up the whole investigation report and openly declare the whole Russia probe as a made-up report. U.S. Election Desk. WION World is One.
The high number of jobless claims has stalled the economic recovery of New York City. And despite some gains and measures for small businesses like restaurants, unemployment still poses a great risk. Here's an exclusive ground report from the city of New York. Christine Guerrero worked as a full-time bartender at the often-packed New York City restaurant, The Rag Trade. She was furloughed from her job in March and remembers thinking it would only last a few weeks.
I'm in an accelerated nursing program, so this hit at a really inopportune time. I had to take out student loans to front the cost of that, which I hadn't anticipated because I had been paying my tuition as I went.
Across the United States, unemployment has skyrocketed since the coronavirus pandemic. While the number of Americans seeking unemployment benefits slightly declined last week compared to its previous week to a still high 837,000, the economy is struggling to sustain a tentative recovery that began in the summer.
It's stressful. You go this long. I've been furloughed for 7 months now.
A Labor Department's report released Thursday suggested that companies are still cutting a historic high number of jobs. But weekly numbers are now less reliable, as states like California put a 2-week halt on processing early applications in a bid to root out fraudulent claims. Initial jobless claims are stuck above the highest levels of the 2008-2009 Great Recession. However, last week, economists at Goldman Sachs noted, according to other government data, that number has actually fallen below the peak of the recession. Consumer confidence jumped in September, fueled by optimism among higher-income households, though it remains below pre-pandemic levels. However, fear of a second wave of the coronavirus and the ongoing partisan battle in Washington over reaching a consensus in providing a rescue package is squeezing many small businesses and their workers, like Guerrero.
You kind of have to figure out what's important and what you need because you don't know when the unemployment's going to run out, when the Fed money is going to be, taken away.
Adding to Guerrero's stress is the uncertainty many restaurant workers face in New York City, a hallmark of its economy. While the city just allowed restaurants to have 25% capacity indoor dining and has made outdoor dining permanent, over 1,200 restaurants have already shut their doors, and many will follow without a coherent plan.
I think that's what's most frustrating for people in the hospitality industry is we don't have any plan in action. We have nothing set in stone. The beginning phases, they were very organized with what was opening when, and then it got to restaurants and it was kind of like, we'll deal with you later.
For now, Guerrero says she's planning for the worst and hoping for the best. Susan Tehrani from New York for WION. World is One. And with that, we come to the end of U.S. Election Special Broadcast. Thank you for staying with us and watching. We hope you enjoyed the show.